You dream about starting your own business, but the moment you get serious, fear kicks in. What if I'm not good enough? What if I fail? What if I waste my time and money? You're not alone. And today, we're tackling those doubts head on. Because the truth is, starting your own business is way more doable than you think. Even if you're broke, even if you're scared, even if you have no perfect idea yet. We're breaking down the biggest myths that hold people back and showing you how real entrepreneurs actually got started. Messy, imperfect, and on a budget. So if you've been waiting for a sign to finally take that first step, this is it. Let's dive in.
Have you ever, thought about starting your own thing, like really calling the shots? I feel like a lot of people have, that entrepreneurial dream.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a really common aspiration, that idea of being your own boss, creating something from scratch. It's definitely appealing to a lot of people.
Totally. But then I feel like the second you start thinking about it seriously, all these doubts start to creep in. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. I think we all experience that to some extent. It's that voice of fear and uncertainty that starts to question whether you're actually capable or if your idea is good enough, those self-doubts.
Exactly. Like, am I even cut out for this? Do I actually have what it takes?
Right. And maybe the biggest one, I think, is that fear that your idea isn't good enough.
Yeah, totally. And you don't want to waste, all this time and energy, not to mention money, on something that ends up failing.
It's definitely a valid concern. No one wants to pour their heart and soul into something that just fizzles out. It can feel really disheartening.
It is. And, those fears are actually pretty common. We saw a recent survey that showed that those were the top 2 reasons people hadn't started a business.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't confident in their ideas, and they were afraid of wasting, precious time and money.
Right. And it's interesting how those mental blocks, those limiting beliefs, can become so powerful. They can really hold people back from taking action.
So in this deep dive, we're going to really try to unpack those roadblocks.
Yeah, the idea is to dive into those fears, look at the things that are holding people back,
Exactly. We're going to tackle some of those common myths about entrepreneurship. We've looked at, some survey data and also real life experiences of people who've been there and done that.
Yeah, and hopefully by exploring those experiences, we can sort of dismantle those myths and provide a more realistic perspective on what it takes to actually start a business.
Totally. I mean, that's really the whole mission of this deep dive, right?
Yeah.
To show that starting a business might actually be more accessible than a lot of people think.
Absolutely. And I think a big part of that is just shifting your perspective a bit, moving away from that mindset of apprehension and worry towards a more curious and proactive approach, recognizing that a lot of those obstacles are more mental than anything else.
Right. So let's jump right in with the first myth, which is, I need a brilliant idea to start a business. It's like this huge barrier for people.
Oh, definitely. It's like everyone thinks they need to come up with the next Facebook or Uber, something revolutionary.
Yeah, it's super intimidating. But one of the sources we looked at actually challenged that whole notion pretty directly. Basically said, you don't need a great idea to start. You just need an idea, period.
I love that. It's so simple, but it really reframes the whole thing, doesn't it?
It does. And, the source even used this really cool analogy about learning to ride a bike. They said you can read every book on cycling. You can watch the Tour de France every year. But until you actually get on that bike and start pedaling, you're never going to learn.
Yeah. It's so true. You have to actually get your hands dirty and experience it firsthand.
Yeah. And, you're going to wobble a bit. You're probably going to fall a couple of times. But those falls, those are part of the learning process.
Absolutely. That's how you develop balance and coordination.
So relating that back to starting a business, those early stumbles and setbacks, they're not wasted time.
Not at all. They're really valuable learning experiences.
They're crucial. And I love this. This source actually suggested this exercise of brainstorming 50 terrible business ideas.
That's brilliant. I love that.
Right. The point is to get rid of that pressure of having to come up with this perfect idea right away.
Totally. It's about, lowering the bar and just letting your mind explore possibilities without judgment.
Exactly. And the more ideas you generate, even bad ones, the more likely you are to stumble upon something that actually has potential.
Yeah, it's like, when you're writing, sometimes you have to just get all the bad ideas out before the good ones start to flow.
Totally. And to like illustrate this whole point, you know, think about some of the most successful companies out there. Facebook started as like this really simple directory for college students.
Right. And it's hard to imagine now, but at the time, it wasn't this like groundbreaking, world-changing idea.
Not at all. And Slack, that really popular messaging app,
Mm.
that started as an internal communication tool for a video game company. A video game company that, wasn't even that successful itself.
Yeah. And then you have Twitter. That came out of believe it or not, a struggling podcasting company.
It's wild, right? Like, none of these companies started with these incredibly innovative ideas. They evolved over time, they adapted, and they eventually found their niche.
Absolutely. And I think that's a really important point about innovation. It's often an emergent process. You start with something and then you refine it, you iterate, you listen to feedback, and you adapt along the way.
Okay, so let's move on to the next myth, which I feel like is a big one for people. It's this fear that if you start a business and it doesn't succeed, all that time you invested was basically wasted.
That's a really common fear, isn't it? The idea of pouring all this time and energy into something and then having nothing to show for it.
Totally. But, our source pointed out that that perspective really misunderstands how learning works.
Yeah, it's like saying, if you fall off your bike a few times while you're learning, then all that time spent practicing was a waste.
Exactly. You don't give up after a few wobbly moments and say, well, cycling's not for me. You get back on and you keep practicing because you know those falls were part of the process.
Right. And the same applies to building a business. Those early stumbles, those setbacks, they're actually teaching you valuable lessons.
They really are. It's like, in traditional schooling, you're taught to avoid mistakes, to get the right answers, to follow a specific path. But real life, and especially entrepreneurship, is way more unpredictable. There's no guarantee you'll succeed, and you kind of have to be okay with that.
Absolutely. And I think developing a comfort level with that uncertainty is really important for any entrepreneur.
Yeah, being able to navigate the unknown is a huge skill.
Mhm.
And, think about what you actually gain from those so-called failures. You learn what customers actually want, what they need, which isn't always the same as what they say they want.
Right. And you gain experience in marketing and selling. You learn how to manage your time and resources, all those things.
And importantly, you learn how to adapt and pivot when things inevitably don't go according to plan.
Which they almost never do, right?
Exactly. But those skills, they're not limited to just starting a business. They're valuable in pretty much any area of life.
Absolutely. They're transferable skills that can help you in your career, your relationships, pretty much everything.
It's true. And the person behind one of the sources actually shared their own story. They had 6 different businesses fail before they finally hit it big with their 7th one.
Wow, that's persistence.
It is. And they talked about those earlier experiences, not as failures, but as their real-world MBA.
I love that. It's like reframing those experiences as valuable investments in your education.
That's exactly it. Okay, so myth number 3 is a big one. I need a ton of money to start a business.
Yeah, that's definitely a common misconception. And I think shows like Shark Tank, while entertaining, can kind of perpetuate that idea.
Right, they focus on these businesses that are looking for like huge investments. But in reality, most people starting their first business don't need that much money at all, especially if you're starting a service-based business.
That's a really important distinction. Most first businesses should probably be service-based, not product-based. And service businesses, they typically require very little upfront investment.
Exactly. You're essentially selling your skills and your time. And our source gave this great example. Imagine a 14-year-old trying to make some extra money over the summer.
Okay, I like where this is going.
Right. They're not going to investors for funding. They're thinking about things like mowing lawns, walking dogs, maybe tutoring. All those are service businesses.
It's so true. They're using their existing skills and resources to provide a service to people in their community.
And as adults, we have even more skills and knowledge that we can leverage. The source listed a whole bunch of service-based businesses you could start with minimal costs.
Yeah, like what were some of those?
Like freelance writing, web design, bookkeeping, social media management. There's virtual assistant services, consulting, photography, tutoring, all sorts of home services, and the list goes on.
And what's interesting? A lot of people probably already have the skills and even some of the basic tools they need to get started with some of those.
Right. The real barrier is often that mental block, that belief that you need a lot of money to even consider starting a business.
Totally. And when you look at the origins of some really successful companies, a lot of them actually started as service businesses too.
Oh, yeah, that's a great point. Like, even Microsoft, they started as a programming service. Amazon started as a book procurement service, essentially. And even IBM, they were a business consulting service in the beginning.
And they all eventually transitioned into these product-focused companies, but they started by providing services.
Exactly. So a service-based model can be a really great, accessible way to get your foot in the door, start generating revenue, and gain valuable experience.
Totally. Okay, so myth number 4 is one that the source called probably the most dangerous myth out there.
Oh, what's that one?
It's this idea that you have to quit your job and go all in to start a business.
Oh, yeah, that's a scary one.
It's a big leap of faith. And, the source pointed out that this fear of losing financial security, a lot of times it's just that fear disguised as being responsible.
I think that's so true. It's easier to stay in your comfort zone, even if you're not totally happy, than to risk the unknown.
Right. But the truth is, most successful businesses don't start that way. They start as side hustles.
Exactly. You don't have to quit your job and work on your business 40, 50, 60 hours a week right off the bat.
Not at all. You can start small. Even dedicating like 20, 30 minutes a day can make a difference.
That's what I love about this. It's so doable.
Yeah.
And the source even suggested ways to, like, incorporate your business into your existing routine. Maybe you wake up a little earlier, use your lunch break more effectively, or carve out some time on the weekends.
Exactly. And the goal initially isn't to replace your full-time income, it's to learn.
Right. It's to learn the ropes and see if your idea actually has legs.
And, there are so many examples of successful businesses that started as side projects.
Oh, yeah. Like, what are some?
Well, like Shopify. They started as an online snowboard store.
Really?
Yeah, they were just selling snowboards online. And Spanx, those shapewear garments?
Yeah.
The founder of Spanx created those while she was still working her day job selling fax machines.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah. And then you have Craigslist. That started as a simple email newsletter.
It's crazy how these huge companies started from such humble beginnings.
And GitHub, which is a platform for, developers to collaborate on code, that was a weekend project for 2 guys who had full-time jobs.
It's amazing.
So, starting small, it reduces your risk financially, but also psychologically. You're not putting all your eggs in one basket.
Totally. Okay, the last myth we're going to tackle is what our source called the perfectionism trap. It's this expectation that your first business should give you everything you've ever wanted right off the bat.
Oh, yeah, I've definitely seen that. People have this idea that their first business is going to bring them like complete financial freedom, align perfectly with their passions, give them total flexibility, all of that.
Yeah, it's like it's going to be their dream job right out of the gate.
Right. And as the source pointed out, it's kind of like having this impossible standard for a first date.
Yeah, you're expecting this one interaction to fulfill all your needs and desires.
Exactly. It's just not realistic.
The reality is, it's more of a journey, right? Your first business is probably going to teach you the basics, maybe bring in some income. Your second business might allow you to build on those skills, maybe make more money. And it might be your third or fourth business before you start seeing those bigger dreams realized.
That's a much better way to look at it. It's like a progression, not a destination.
And the person behind this source, they shared their own journey. They started with freelance web design as a teenager, then they tried MLM, then tutoring, and a few other ventures that didn't quite work out. But all of those experiences eventually led them to a successful, sustainable business.
I think it's important to hear those kinds of stories. It normalizes the idea that, it's okay to have a few false starts before you find something that really clicks.
Totally. And if you wait for that perfect business idea, the one that checks all the boxes from day one, you'll probably be waiting forever. The key is to lower the bar and just get started.
Exactly. And that brings us to a really important point that one of the sources really emphasized. For a lot of would-be entrepreneurs, the biggest obstacles are a self-imposed high bar and just thinking too much.
Yeah, analysis paralysis, it can be crippling.
It can. But one of the sources suggested this really great mental trick, and it's to basically prepare yourself for the possibility that your first 3 businesses might not become huge successes.
That's interesting.
It is. But the idea is that those first 3 businesses will be incredibly valuable learning experiences.
Like those first YouTube videos, it might be, a little rough around the edges.
Right. Everyone starts somewhere.
Right.
And it takes the pressure off that first attempt.
So the focus shifts from achieving immediate success to embracing the learning process.
Exactly. And it allows you to experiment and make mistakes without that fear of catastrophic failure hanging over you.
Which is huge.
Yeah.
You have to be willing to put yourself out there and risk making mistakes if you want to learn and grow. And, it's so important to remember that the idea itself isn't the magic ingredient.
Right. You could have the most brilliant idea in the world, but if you don't take action, it's just an idea.
It's like wanting to be a chef but never actually cooking anything.
Perfect analogy. And I think that's where a lot of people get stuck. They have all these great ideas, but they never actually take steps to bring them to life.
And the source also pointed out something really interesting. They said, the people who are ultimately successful in business aren't necessarily the smartest or the most talented.
Really?
Yeah. They're often just the ones who are willing to start before they felt ready.
I think that's so true. It's about having the courage to take that first step, even if you're not sure what you're doing.
And that kind of leads into this idea of getting comfortable with uncertainty, which is something that's really crucial for entrepreneurs.
Absolutely. It's about, accepting that you're not going to have all the answers, that things are going to be unpredictable.
Right. And as humans, we're wired to seek certainty and security. But so many rewarding experiences in life, like building relationships or learning new skills, they involve stepping into the unknown.
It's like, you can't have a deep, meaningful relationship without being vulnerable and opening yourself up to the possibility of getting hurt.
Totally. And you can't learn a new skill without being willing to make mistakes and look a little foolish at first.
Exactly. And each time you step outside your comfort zone, you're building that muscle of resilience and adaptability.
And that muscle, that's what allows you to navigate the ups and downs of entrepreneurship, because it's not going to be a smooth ride.
Definitely not. There are going to be challenges and setbacks along the way.
But if you can embrace the uncertainty and learn to adapt, you'll be so much better equipped to handle whatever comes your way.
Okay, so we've talked about some of the myths that hold people back from starting a business. But now, how about some practical advice on actually taking that first step?
Right. How do you actually get started? Well, our sources had some really great advice on starting small, like really small.
I like that. Small steps, big results.
That's the idea. So first things first, if you're even slightly convinced that you want to try this, just spend 20 minutes brainstorming skills you already have that could be valuable to others.
Okay, that's manageable.
Right. And then start paying attention to problems that people around you are talking about. What are they complaining about? What are they struggling with?
Yeah, and not just like passively listening, actively trying to identify, recurring patterns or unmet needs.
Exactly. And then have conversations with the few people who are actually experiencing those problems. Don't pitch anything just yet. Just listen and try to really understand their perspective.
That's a really important point. It's not about selling at this point. It's about understanding.
Totally. And once you've got a handle on a specific problem that people are facing, figure out the simplest service you could offer that addresses just one aspect of that problem. Then reach out to like 1 to 3 people you know who could potentially benefit from that service.
Okay, so starting really small with people you already have a connection with.
Yeah. That's the key. It keeps the stakes low. And when you deliver that service, really pay attention to everything you're learning. What worked well, what didn't. Then use that feedback to refine your approach as you slowly expand to a few more clients.
So it's all about learning by doing and constantly improving.
Absolutely. And one of the sources pointed out this really interesting thing. They said the people who are most successful are often the ones who are willing to start small and embrace that learning process. They're not afraid to experiment and make mistakes.
Makes sense. When you start small, there's less pressure to be perfect right away.
Right. You have the freedom to try things out and see what works.
It's like that old saying, you can't learn to swim by reading a book. You have to get in the water.
It's so true. And, one of the sources shared some of their early experiences as an entrepreneur. They talked about things like struggling with invoicing, being nervous for their first client call, maybe even undercharging because they weren't sure what to charge.
Those are all relatable experiences, like those early bumps in the road.
Exactly. But those are the experiences that teach you the most.
Right. You're learning the practical realities of running a business firsthand.
And often you discover strengths you didn't even know you had. Maybe you're really good at problem solving or handling difficult conversations.
Yeah, things you don't necessarily learn in a classroom.
Totally. So the point is, by starting small, the stakes are low, but the potential for learning is really high.
You're minimizing your risk while maximizing your education.
Exactly. So think about it this way. 6 months from now, you could still be stuck in the planning phase, feeling no closer to launching your business. Or you could have 6 months of real experience under your belt, even if it's a little messy.
I like that. It's like choosing action over inaction.
Right. And a year from now, you could have already tested out a few different ideas, gained a ton of knowledge, and built valuable connections. And 5 years from now, you could have a thriving, evolved business that you're truly passionate about.
And that's so much more fulfilling than just dreaming about it, isn't it?
Absolutely. Now, one of the sources actually had this super practical idea to help people get started. They called it the 7-Day Business Launch Challenge.
Ooh, I like the sound of that. What's involved?
So day 1 is all about generating ideas. You spend 20 minutes brainstorming as many business ideas as you can come up with, aiming for at least 20. Then you circle the 3 that feel the most doable and interesting to you.
Okay, so getting those creative juices flowing.
Exactly. Then day 2 is about validating those ideas. So you figure out who would benefit from each idea, what specific problem you'd be solving, and how people are currently addressing that problem. And then you actually talk to a couple of potential customers to get their feedback.
So you're not just operating in a vacuum, you're actually getting real-world input.
That's crucial. Then day 3 is all about creating a simple offer. What's the most basic version of your service or product that you could provide?
Keeping it simple, focusing on the essentials.
Totally. And on day 4, you figure out your pricing, what feels fair to you. And here's a tip from the source. Once you have a price in mind, consider doubling it.
Interesting. I guess people often undervalue their skills and services, especially when they're starting out.
That's what the source said. Then on day 5, you do some outreach. You create a list of 10 people who could potentially benefit from your offer, and you reach out to at least 5 of them.
Just starting to put yourself out there.
Exactly. And the goal isn't necessarily to get clients right away. It's more about getting comfortable with the process. Then day 6 is about setting up some basic systems. You create a dedicated email address, figure out how you'll get paid, create a simple proposal template, and a way to track your potential clients.
So like the basic infrastructure of your business.
Right. And then day 7 is the big one. You make your first offer, you reach out to 3 potential clients, clearly explain your service or the product, tell them your price, and ask if they'd be interested.
So simple, but so powerful.
It is. And the challenge has a few important rules. No skipping steps, no striving for perfection, and you have to commit to taking action even if you're feeling scared.
I think that's such an important point, acknowledging those fears, but moving forward anyway.
Yeah. You only spend 30 minutes a day on each task, and the source suggested sharing your progress with someone for accountability.
Having that support system can make a big difference.
Totally.
Yeah.
And the outcome of the challenge. You might not have a perfect business, but you will have a started business.
And that's huge. Just taking that initial step puts you so far ahead of most people.
And as one of the sources so perfectly put it, 1 year from now, you'll wish you had started today.
That's such a great quote. It really drives home the importance of taking action now.
So as we wrap up, we want to leave you with a call to action. Take one small, tangible step today. Not tomorrow, not next week, but today.
Yeah, even if it's something really small, like sending an email, making a phone call, creating a simple website, anything that moves you forward.
Remember, building a business isn't about one giant leap. It's a series of small, consistent steps.
And those steps, they build momentum.
They do. And each step, even if it seems insignificant, teaches you something valuable.
And it's important to remember, every successful entrepreneur started right where you are now at the beginning.
So the only question that matters now is this. What small step will you take today?
Yeah.
What's going to be your next move?
We're excited to see what you do.
Thank you for listening. If this episode resonated with you, the best way to support the podcast is to hit like, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Every bit of support helps us keep creating content that actually matters. See you in the next one.